Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. I read an interesting article in one of the newspapers this week in which it was recalling in the first place the tsunami of 10 years ago. I wonder if you remember that. The tsunami that hit Indonesia the worst. And it was saying in the article, reminding me and us, that 250,000 people were killed by that tsunami. I mean, it is appalling how that one event of nature could take out 250,000 people in just an hour or two. But the story was heartening in another way, because it described how one family lost a daughter and they thought she had been swept away and drowned. But it turned out that in fact she was still alive. And they found her on an island nearby, and it looks like they'll be able to find her brother as well. So out of that terrible disaster, there was this little ray of kind of sunshine that has come out of it. And it's hard to imagine the joy that must be in that mother's heart. Somebody had taken the little girl in and had been caring for her through all those years. And now is happy to have her reunited with her mother. So it's a wonderful story. But it touches me because in two of our readings today we have, in the Gospel reading and in the first reading from the Hebrew Scriptures, a story of natural events, disasters if you like, the storm in the Gospel reading, and then for Elijah on Mount Horeb, he has this thing which may be a hurricane or a tornado, which seems to pick up rocks and smash them. And then there's the earthquake. And for all of us who experience natural disasters when they come, they are terribly frightening, aren't they? I mean, to just have a look at where that tornado came through Brimfield and to see the force of that wind, how in just a minute it snaps these huge, thick trees into splinters. It's hard, nature on a morning like this where it looks so beautiful. Hard to see it when it's furious. So here's the storm, but through this storm, at the end of the storm, we have that line which it says in the Gospel, as you can see, truly you are the Son of God. So somehow through the storm, God works out this something which shows that his own Son is the Lord of nature here. This is one place of two. I think it is in Matthew's Gospel, two places in Matthew's Gospel, where Jesus is described as praying. And this is one of the two. The other one, I think, is the Passion. So this is a very important scene for Matthew. And he says before it happens, Jesus goes up the mountain to pray. And then there is this event on the lake. I was with somebody yesterday who was telling me, as far as he's concerned, everything that happens in the Bible is a lot of nonsense. So that was an interesting discussion for me. And I was saying why to me it is not nonsense. For example, Jesus Christ is attributed in historical documents from the time more or less as much as anybody else in ancient times. So if you think that Jesus didn't exist, you might as well say Caesar didn't exist either. Carry on. He does exist. And then that these things happen are attested, in this case, by more than one gospel writer who were not copying from each other. But it also seems to me that if I was to give one of the disciples a cell phone at that time and say, you can phone somebody else with this, you can imagine what their response might be. Are you a magician? Or are you a demon? Or what? And the fact that we simply don't understand quite how something occurs doesn't mean to say that it doesn't occur, and it is good. if we had said to people of that time that one day you'll be able to see inside the human body with an MRI or a CAT scan, they would have said you'll be insane. But when you understand enough about how energy works and how nature works, then things which seem to be a miracle can take place. So to me, this thing very well could have been taking place. And how do I know that Jesus is my Lord? It's not by any proof, but it's by the fact that I know him. In the same way that I don't need a proof that my mother loves me. I suppose I could prove it, but I don't need to prove it because I know her. I know her love to me, and so it is with all of us. How do we know that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, as it says at the end of this gospel? Because we know him. And at that time that we give our hearts to him, that knowledge and that encouragement and that sureness flows into our own spirits. So here is a storm, and I think one of the points, why does Matthew have this account in the gospel? I don't think it's only to show that Jesus had that power over nature at that time, but it's also that he is the Lord of our storms, and there are storms around us. There are the war in Gaza, these different wars that we have, the Ebola virus. There are storms in our own environment. There's economic storms. We've just come through, almost 6 years of this terrible recession. Things happen around us, and sometimes they happen to us individually and personally. In a relationship, whether it's sometimes a disease, sometimes financial difficulties, we find ourselves at times in storms. And like the disciples, we become afraid, terribly afraid. I remember once I was on a little yacht with another young person, when I was a young person, with another friend of mine who was also just a teenager. I don't think we had life jackets, but that little yacht capsized in the ocean. And I know what that fear is like when you can't hold on anymore. And you know you're looking at probably the end of your life. It is terrible, that fear. And to see at that moment a police boat, rescue boat coming towards us, I don't know, they must have been looking at that little yacht of ours and seeing it flipped over, and they came out to get us. I tell you, I had a sense of thanksgiving for the police that morning like never before. So here they are, the disciples here in this boat, in this storm, and they are afraid that it can be swamped. So we ourselves have time in our own life that we get terribly afraid. Maybe you have felt that way, and it seems like God is far away from you. And so Peter here we have, when he responds, it's lovely to see him doing this, and I think it's why we look to him as the leader of the church, the community of faith, because as human as he is, he's often also the leader of faith. He steps out like this. Yeah, he calls out to Jesus and he says, "Call to me to come to you." And we look to him because he is he's our leader in that way. And so he responds to Jesus, yes. Jesus says, "Come to me," and he begins. So in our own storms, the question is, can we look to God in what seems to us a terrible situation, when we are seized with anxiety, when we perhaps become depressed in our own circumstances, to be able to look to God in Jesus Christ for his strength and his deliverance? Well, like Peter, even if we can, even at the beginning of that, even if now here in church I say, look, I've been so concerned about this financial situation of mine, or my child, or my parent, or my relationship, whatever it is, 5 minutes after this we can be caught up in anxiety again, like Peter. So again, he's a sort of a sample of what we all go through, because he gets afraid, he sees the water, he begins to sink, and Jesus draws him out of the water. And there's a lovely little phrase here in Matthew's Gospel. Matthew writes down Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? You of little faith. And it's a great phrase because it's only in Matthew's Gospel, you of little faith. And it's one word in the Greek, oligopistos. Maybe you can try and remember it, oligopistos. Matthew calls us as Christians, all of us, because we are like this in this Gospel. He says, we are little faiths, one word. So we who follow Jesus, we are little faith Christians. And all the way through this Gospel, as he is here, Jesus is trying to build up our faith. So we sink into the water. He says, why did you doubt? You see, you could trust me. And slowly, as we go, as we mature as Christians, our faith deepens. That we can be in the middle of a storm, look to God for his guidance, and find that somewhere through that storm, on the other side of that storm, we are somehow different and bigger people because we know we can trust God. You know, a marriage can be like that too, can't it? You come through a difficult time together, maybe a great financial difficulty. You're still together at the end of it. Then there's something wonderful about that, the way the relationship has strengthened and grown and deepened. Well, that's what it is like with Jesus Christ. He says, in the middle of your storm, look to me, keep looking to me, keep relying on me, even though you are a little faith person. Rely on me, and you'll see something much bigger and better and different on the far side of that storm. In the name of Christ, amen.